So we're more than just a brain, more than just behavioral psychology. You're also a body, you're also a heart, you're also a spirit. And so how do we not neglect any of those aspects? In fact, how do we address some of those carefully and kindly to bring about what I would say is true holistic care?
Sons, hey, welcome back to the Being Sons podcast. My name's Jay, and it's my joy and pleasure to host conversations about sonship and find people who have things to share that would encourage us, vessels through which God can offer his love and his brotherhood and his fathering and his mothering to us, which is something that we all need. Me, for sure, 53 years old, still in desperate need of all of the ways that God offers salvation. And I am so pleased to have a guest here that many of you are probably familiar with. His name is Sam Eldredge, and he has recently played a very important role in my life. I've known about him from a distance, met him on a couple of occasions. But God, in his abundance and in his kindness, allowed me to sit under his leadership and enjoy some healing that I've been praying for many years. And so it's my joy and with great thankfulness, Sam, that I want to welcome you to the Being Sons podcast.
Thank you, Jay. It's an honor to be here. I've been looking forward to this conversation. So thank you for the kind words. And what a privilege to get to partner with anybody as they pursue healing.
Yeah, it really is. It's amazing looking back in my story that when my heart began to see what salvation actually was, I was really excited about some things that feel a little bit more rah-rah. I was very excited about getting my power back, getting my authority back, getting a true name, hearing God say, hey, this is how I feel about you, and this is the story that you're in. You're Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, Walter Mitty, you have a story like those, so come on, let's go. And then it gets to the part where you're having to do some of the internal work, where you're being invited to do the internal work, and a lot of the initial excitement becomes hard.
I mean, you could just hear the way the sentence went there. There was energy and excitement. I'm like, yes, where's my lightsaber? Where's my starship? Where's the battle? And then the words start to slow down.
Because we're not quite sure how to take the next step. Right. Yes. And it's a privilege to have people who can very tenderly and very kindly help us take the next step, because what I have found is that once we get to that part in our journey as sons, we tend to have a lot of contempt, a lot of things arise in us that are the opposite of the kindness that we first felt. And we need guides, we need counselors, and what a joy to be able to participate in the full work of redemption with God, especially when it comes to this hard stuff. And Sam, that's something that I have seen you become here. What I wanted to start off with, this is the first question, because this podcast is really focused on looking at everything through the lens of sonship. This is how I would say it. Sons, we are, being sons, a tribe of sons growing in the process of receiving God's full salvation, learning how to come home in every way that a man can come home to God as their Father. That means to become free to love God, to love ourselves, and to live life to the full. And there's a lot of internal work that's required in order for us to come to that place. So just so you know the audience that you're speaking to, sons, how do we actually live outside of the cute metaphor of sons and more into the practicality of it and into the reality of our positions as sons in the kingdom? And so with that as the backdrop, I want to ask you this first question. As one of God's sons, working in partnership with him Sam, how would you describe the way that you bear your Father's image, his heart in the world?
It's a generous and beautiful question, Jay, as it tees me up to go. I look at how our design is. I look at what the example we were given in Christ is. I look at the creativity, and my mind goes in several different directions. So thank you for just the springboard of the question. I look at my work at present. I'd say it's defined by a couple of pieces. It's defined by creativity. It's defined by healing and redemption. And it's defined by a lot of mystery. And those pieces feel increasingly possible as someone who doesn't exist in a vacuum, as someone who's not trying to reinvent the wheel, as someone who's not trying to just struggle their way up. But like the more that I've been able to walk in, seeing that as an inheritance and as actually part of like this great spiritual family mission, come to heal the brokenhearted and set the captives free, as Christ declared over himself, and to go, okay, what I get to see myself doing in that redemptive for people's stories, for ways that we have felt stuck or trapped or harmed, the ways that we have felt unable to love or unable to take the next step. Like what we're doing is we're engaging a little bit of the healing work while also engaging some creativity in terms of how we get there. And I'd love to touch more on that later. But then there's this mysterious element that I want to say. One of the things that I think probably the biggest thing for me was I didn't want to have the conversations at first internally. I didn't want to be curious. I didn't want to ask the friend the hard question, are you doing okay? Or have you felt low? Have you thought of hurting yourself? Or you've been in a dark season? Like those types of questions, that sort of theme, because I felt like if I asked them and they said, no, I'm not doing well, that somehow is now my responsibility to solve it. I needed to be able to fix whatever they were interacting with. And so instead what I would choose is to just abandon them by not asking the question. I wouldn't ask myself the question. I wouldn't ask other people the question, because there was this looming, if you ask, then you need to be able to fix. Irvin Yalom writes in his book, The Gift of Therapy, that we don't need to be able to solve the thing. We need to let the other person stand shoulder to shoulder facing it together. And it's this invitation to ask the question. As a son who doesn't have to figure everything out, who will be told the next step, asking questions like that gets so much easier. So there's my tee up for if I didn't have that, then the world, whether I was a surgeon, a mechanic, a therapist, a roofer, the pressure becomes perform, get it right, do a really good, don't slip up, don't have any questions, or else you lose everything, or truly. Talk about the other side of this. How do you maintain that? Like, oh my gosh, I could do like 2 roofs that way before the stress of being the perfect roofer, the perfect therapist would just, I think, cause my knees to buckle and it'd be hard to keep going.
I identify with that so much. We want to be in environments with other people where we're growing and we're hearing stories, but the complexity, the trauma, it gets really overwhelming, and to the degree that we feel like it's up to us to help somebody, pass through that birth canal and become a new version of themselves, it can be terrifying.
Right?
What do we say? What do we do? How do we do it?
Exactly. Oh, if this is the one takeaway from our conversation for your listeners, I would hope that it's, you don't have to know the next step. You don't have to solve it, but don't abandon the other person to face it alone. You just being with them is a phenomenal gift.
I want to come back to that for sure.
Yes.
Here's the goal. I hope this is where we get to go in our amount of time here. I have something that I want to say to you that I just felt really compelled to say to you. And then I want to ask you about Noble and discuss with you your heart behind it, what I got to experience at Noble with you here recently. And then most of the men that I'm around have got, well, all of them could benefit from, you know, healing work. I mean, I pray that everybody is able to, at some point, somewhere, find God's provision for them to find the deep healing that he offers, that Jesus came to bring us. It's very common for me to be around a campfire with other men. And I've been doing it for a decade now. And I know that there are many, many men who listen to this, many men around the world who are gathering around campfires. You do extremely well in the environment that I saw at helping coach us to know what to do and how to hold each other's stories in pain. So one of the things that I would like for God to bring through you to us is some wisdom, how we might, in this simple environment, gathering around a fire, know how to better carry that space, right? So it's not near the complexity or the invitation. It's not a 5-day thing. It's like we've got 3 hours to hold some space to do something wonderful. And I've seen God do amazing things. But I want to invite you, based on what you are learning, what you have learned, to help give us some counsel on that space. So if we were able to get through all of that in the course of this 60-minute podcast, well then,
Sounds great.
come on, let's do it.
Well, so let's play ping pong with it, Jay.
Okay.
How have you seen it go wrong?
Well, I've seen it go wrong. And that's why we've created some rules around it to try and keep it from going wrong. I think probably the most discouraging and dishonoring thing is that when men begin to share their story, they're not honored. Their story, their heart is not honored in some way. So either they're interrupted, somebody offers a comparative story, somebody offers a lesson, somebody refers to a sermon, a teaching that somebody else shared, something that they read, right? So they're offering head knowledge instead of even being curious, because they've probably never received what they most need, instead of being curious about what does this man actually need in telling his story? Why does he have the courage to tell a story? And then how might I partner with God to either say something or to not say something that will help this man take the next step toward healing? So speaking too quickly, not knowing exactly how to respond, and not honoring. I've also, it's also difficult to give men no guidance on how to share their story, so that one story actually becomes 10 stories that are all tangential, and they start off with a heart to get to the point of this story because they know this is the thing, but what happens is they end up telling 6 or 7 different stories, and it's their way of it's probably their way of subconsciously avoiding coming to the hard thing. And what they really need is for somebody to ask a really brilliant question to really help them come back on center. So, I mean, there's just a couple of things.
Pretty big things, right?
Yeah,
I think most of us have been on the receiving end of the, hey, here I'm sharing this this hard element of my story, and then somebody comes in. We have terminology for it, but it's a form of bypassing would be the language I would use, which is that skipping the process to get to the right answer.
Mm-hmm.
And it's looking for a shortcut for a variety of reasons. I think I've seen that from folks who are uncomfortable with the unsolved,
mm-hmm.
who feel responsible, perhaps like I mentioned earlier, with like if I ask the question and it goes poorly, do I then I have to put them back together? I don't know how to put people back together. So and now they're a mess and I'm uncomfortable. There's a level of our own codependency where it's our job to make sure everybody else stays okay. And if they're not okay, then we're not okay. And their
Mm-hmm.
stuff actually activates our own work. There's so many ways this goes, Jay. And yes, we've created a lot of rules and handrails to help, because at Noble, as you experience, we're doing this in a group. We're doing this in a communal setting that's terrifying, because to be alone with a therapist and go into your own work, having done this personally many times, that feels like being asked to strip down and show the mole on my left cheek and be like, it kind of looks like George Washington, but is it cancer? I don't know. And it's humiliating. It's
Yeah.
embarrassing.
Uh-huh.
But to then do that in a room full of strangers that you just met is like, why have you taken this up times 6? And therefore, how do we create an environment that's safe and actually amplifies the healing, rather than makes this into sort of like a children's birthday party with the piñata in the middle of the room and everybody else taking turns trying to bust open to get the candy out. Sure hope it's not Tootsie Rolls. Those are always disappointing. They always get so hard. So I have lots of thoughts on that, Jay.
Yeah. Okay, so it's pretty common for a host to ask a guest, "Hey, tell us your story. How'd you get here?" But in praying about that, what I felt led to do was I would like to just share with all of you listening Sam's story as I see it, from a distance through a window. So Sam, here's your story from my perspective, and I will be filled in more and more as our relationship grows, whatever God has for us. 2001, I read your dad's book, Wild at Heart. There are stories of you in that book, and I remember God used those stories to help me understand my childhood more. And of course, I'm asking the question, well, who is this kid? How is he going to turn out? So that's 2001. And then I remember hearing Morgan Snyder, another guy that God's used, tell stories about you. And then it was, let's see, several years later, I met you and it was 2015. I think you went to a Become Good Soil Intensive, and you and I sat by the keg and talked about ramen noodles. And you were young. Like, I'm not even sure it was legal for you to have the beer in your hand.
At an intensive bear trap. I looked young, but yeah, I would have been 24, 25.
Okay, well, I was feeling really old, so by comparison, you probably just looked really young. Several years ago, I started calling people in their 30s kids. I mean, I never thought that would happen,
I'm
but
with you. Perspective changes, right? I was a child at 24. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I enjoyed that conversation, but it, wasn't really anything meaningful. And I remember thinking to myself, this is a sensitive thing to talk to the son of your hero, because you don't want to make it about his dad, all this. And, just seeing you there as a young man, I was just really happy. You're there, you're on your journey. I pray that God does wonderful things in this young man, and that all the things that could benefit him from being the son of John Eldredge will benefit him. And then all of the things that will become obstacles to him will be something that God lovingly, powerfully helps him walk through. Very unique story. And I remember just feeling for you and praying for you, going, God, allow him to have his own unique story in glory. So 2016, forgive me if I got any of these dates wrong, but you co-authored Killing Lions with your dad, John, and my son was in high school at the time, and he probably was not ready for it, but we were on a journey of learning how to be sons together, and he saw this book in my arsenal, and he began to read it. And that turned him on to a podcast that I think he's listened to every single episode of that podcast. He has devoured your magazine multiple times. He still sends me episodes, his favorite episodes from and Sons. Oh, Dad, you don't know about this? Well, let me tell you. Here's their perspective from this podcast. When my son was 18 years old, and we're looking at colleges, he had a lot of fear. He had a lot of concerns, and we're driving. And I said, well, why don't we just call and see if Sam Eldredge would be willing to talk to you? This guy who's been authoring all of these articles and has been a hero of yours. I know God works in beautiful ways, and I knew that you were going to be probably an absolute hero to him. So I called. You answered the phone. You graciously gave us about an hour. You gave us some swag on the way out, and my son felt like he had heard from the wisest man that he needed to hear from in the world. So that was huge for my son, and it really did help us navigate the his journey of where to go after high school. And he's had a great experience, and he continues. I know he's going to be really excited to hear. Hey, Bear. Hey, say hi to Bear, if you wouldn't mind, Sam.
Hey, Bear, it's been too long. Hope you're doing well, man.
Enjoy that, buddy. And then I've heard you speak at some Wild Heart events. I've heard you be on podcasts. You've been in the presence of Wild at Heart, this kingdom that God and your dad have kind of built together. But a couple of months ago, I sat in a chair with like 22 other people. And these people were stuck like me. They were in need like me. And I saw you, Sam, leading with strength. You're clearly your father's son, but you have your own sense of humor. You have your own speaking style. You have your own way of creatively communicating things that looked so different than your father. And I was deeply encouraged in my own calling as a father. I'm actually reading this because I wrote this. I'm deeply encouraged in my own calling as a father to see that you had left home and become your own man. And this morning I was chuckling at the observation that your father, great man that he is, father figure to me and to so many, was used by God to get me on the path to sonship, to healing and salvation. But it's you, John's son, that I needed to help lead me skillfully and take me to the next steps in my own journey. And what I saw reminded me of the scene in A River Runs Through It when the father and his two sons, Norman and Paul, have left home and they've come back for a visit and they went fishing again with their dad. And it's the highlight of the whole movie where Brad Pitt, who is Paul, has learned to become an excellent fisherman, and his brother and his father have sat back. And I remember sitting in the room with you in the very first session and thinking, my God, Sam is his own man. He is being used powerfully, and he has found his way of expressing himself in the world. And I am so glad to be sitting under his wisdom and under his care. And I felt extremely safe the whole week. And I just want to celebrate. That's your story as I see it. And I know that there's so much more to it. You're another person that I want to continue learning from and growing with. So anyway, that's...
Wow, Jay, thank you.
Yeah.
You have most guests share their story, and here you've shared mine, and in such a honoring way. I'm blessed by it. So thank you. Wow.
Does that feel accurate? Am I off in any of that?
What a beautiful... Tell it. Thank you. No, it doesn't. I don't know how I'd say. You're off. I haven't become my own man. I'm enjoying receiving it. Those twists and turns, and the ramen at Morgan's Intensive, the years, decade with Ann Sons, and loved the moment with you and Bear as you were passing through. But it's a fun culmination of and here you are here to get to see these little constellations. I think it stirs in me, Jay, of I wonder what the next pinpoint will be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you were there. You led off the very first session. You are the founder of Noble Workshops, which I'm about to ask you to help everybody understand what that is. And you were with an amazing team I mean, an amazing team of people who very tenderly, skillfully helped us become curious about our stories and find some freedom from ways that we were stuck. You know,
Mm.
there were keys that were offered to us that we had to hold in our hand, and we had to partner with God to stick it in the lock, the rusty lock, and turn the key, and then actually leave the chains there and walk away. You've also got a podcast that I really enjoy. So there's a lot of wisdom that you are bringing to the world right now. So that said, I enjoyed Noble Workshop. So would you just tell us, from your perspective, what is it? What are you doing in the world right now?
Yeah, yeah. The way I think in this context that's the most helpful understanding of Noble Workshops is um, when do we need the surgery to address the wound? When is it the right time to pull back from our worlds for 5 days and take the time to go after some of the deeper work in a intensive format? So the workshop model, I wanted to answer that question and address all of the facets that make us up. So we're more than just a brain, more than just behavioral psychology. You're also a body, you're also a heart, you're also a spirit. And so how do we not neglect any of those aspects? In fact, how do we address some of those carefully and kindly to bring about what I would say is true holistic care? I think if we're neglecting one of those portions, we're actually not doing baseline care. We're getting access to an important area. I've benefited from physical therapy and from some chiropractic and naturopath and a personal trainer, like those kind of snippets in the past. I've taken the body, and the body often ends up being a doorway into trauma. Case in point, Bessel van der Kolk's "The Body Keeps the Score." There's a lot of research around sometimes that nausea in your gut actually isn't just nausea. That may actually be a story waiting for you to slow down enough to hear it. I've done enough personal therapy and talk therapy that I know that the mind matters. I know that's true. But why when have we stayed up here in the head and not made what we call the 18-inch journey down to the heart and into behavior and into really embodying it? And so trying to answer that with 2 decades of getting to go to the mountains, these events that my father had been putting on, being a part of them on the team, watching them as a little boy, seeing what just beauty alone will heal, and going, how do I integrate all of these different pieces? I think this is one of the questions I ended up asking myself along the way was, I've been given all these different pieces of my story, as have you, Jay. And there's this moment where you go, now what do I build with this? There's no Lego manual. That would be kind of nice sometimes to be like, this is actually a forerunner. I had no idea. It looked like there's a bunch of just yellow bricks. For me, eventually there became this aha, this is obviously, I had an attendee ask me last year, Sam, how long did this take you to make? And I was like, in some ways, 20 years. In other ways, 20 minutes. Both are true. They just kind of, so Noble Workshops is 4 nights, 5 days of group experiential therapy meets healing. It's, you don't need to have a diagnosis to be sitting in one of those chairs. That's actually not even truly, if the need is like highly medical, we're going to look to get you somewhere where the care is slightly different. We're not an addiction recovery from a substance. We're after wholeheartedness and taking that really seriously. And so, Jay, on any given day, let's just take a snapshot on maybe like Wednesday. Wednesday, you're going to come into the room. There's going to be a poem with a beautiful design waiting that's specific to that day. A lovely woman is going to come and do 30 minutes of guided stretching and breath work, reading a blessing and benediction over as soft music plays, and a warm towel with eucalyptus is passed around. And then we move. That's all resourcing. That's all bringing you back into the present. That's all you reminding yourself you have a body. I could go into the neuroscience of it. It's functionally EMDR, bilateral stimulation, bringing yourself online. But you don't need to know all that to slow down and pay attention. My body, I've been moving too fast through my own life. Now my soul has come to catch me up and be at one place in time. Into some teaching. Wednesday, Stacia does her talk on internal family systems. There's a framework of how we have learned to protect ourselves. And then the group's invited by invitation, not obligation, to connect and share with maybe one of the ways these roles has played out in their life. And just picking up a card off the floor and holding it and standing there in a room full of, at that point, 25, 30 people is vulnerable, brave act to go, I know what it's like to carry this message. I can stand here and just hold it to my chest and connect with that place. Into several hours of guided, contained, experiential, and by that I mean we're not just talking, we're moving, we're enrolling people from your life, people from your story into the therapeutic work. So it is, I think on my Wednesday, we were still doing some pieces of family of origin and then shifting into some pieces about the present and touching on how has your past shaped you and how are you living out today in a way that isn't true to who you were meant to be, isn't true to how you long to be, and how might you use the tools of compassion and grief and honesty to draw closer to that place.
Okay, so some of what you're describing is terrifying to the people who are listening. Am I
I
right?
assume that sounds like a fire hose for most folks, right? Like,
oh, yeah.
What? Is there a belt for this roller coaster ride? I hope so. That sounded like a loop-de-loop.
Is there another way? Come on. I don't want to go through all of that. I have been there. I was once a pastor at a church. We went to a retreat for the faculty and somebody came to help us do heart work. And I was so pissed. Like I wanted to go play golf, with some of the people, and they were inviting me to do heart work. And I was shocked by how terrified I was and how revolted I was that anybody would think that I needed to do any of that. And yet, I don't even know how many years later this is. Holy smoke, that was around 2000. So we're talking like 27 years later, and I have finally said, okay, I'm ready. Let's go. Let's do it. So I can totally appreciate for you sons out there who are saying, if there is a way to live the life to the full that Jesus is inviting us into, but that it will not require me to do some vulnerable things and to look at pieces of my story and to invite other people to see it, I don't know of a way to do that. So I just want to prepare you guys that as you continue to search for deeper healing, you're probably going to become more comfortable with the fact that you're going to need something that feels very extreme and scary. And God is going to take you by the hand, and he's going to take you by the heart, and he's going to make you aware of that. So with that being said, who do you find comes to this? Like what's the demographic? Like where do you have to be to want to come to Noble and to receive what can be received from the experience?
Yeah. Yeah, that's such a kind word to your audience as well, of like brothers, fellow sons, friends. The answer is connected to what you are offered to them. The folks that come are those who, for many of them, there's been enough suffering to admit the tools I'm trying aren't going to work anymore. And by tools, I mean, for some folks, that has been chemical addiction to drugs and alcohol, pornography. For others, that has been the drug of performance and people pleasing. For others, the drug has just been simply dissociation and Netflix. And for others, it's the spiritual bypassing of the correct spiritual answer, as though that somehow like just makes everything go away. And to folks like that, I would actually invite the story that we're recording this here in Holy Week, and Lazarus Sunday was this past Sunday. I would look at the story of Lazarus, of Christ is on his way in that story. He's already announced to his disciples, you're going to see my glory through this. He's on his way to resurrect Lazarus. And yet he takes the time to be impacted by the sisters and the loss, and he weeps. There's a sentence dedicated for just Jesus wept. He does not skip the process to get to the right answer, to make all the pain go away. Lazarus is back. You guys don't need to cry. You don't need to feel sad. Ta-da! Rabbit is out of the hat. We are given the example that the process is actually the way through. So the kind of folks that come to these events, you have to be 18, just because of the mature nature of some of the stories that are shared. But we've had men and women, single, married, divorced, widowed, from 18. I think our oldest attendee at this point was 79. And I also want to name the thing that different attendees take away is going to look different for each person. Because for some, there's going to be this lens of perspective. There's going to be this, I now have language for my internal world. For others, it's going to be the dignity of putting the stage of what their family life was like in their childhood home, and sitting with the honesty of the messages they received from mom and dad, whether they were explicitly said or implicitly felt, and just getting to embody that and connect with their younger self in that moment. That's going to be a takeaway. For others, there will be this moment of that 2 to 10 degree shift of, I can see a way out of the what felt like the endless loop. I now have another option in my behavior, in my thought life, in my heart life. And it's this, my hope is that we get each a piece of all of those things. But there's also this, like, that if you got one and not the other, that wasn't wrong. That was the thing you needed at the time. That was the next step. May we be willing to take it and to own what's ours.
And it all demands courage. I would say that probably most of the people who arrive at a Noble workshop, they've probably tried a lot of other Christian things. The Precious group that I was with, hey guys, I'm going to send you this podcast when it's over. I'm sure you'll enjoy listening to it. But those other Precious people in my group, many of them had tried so many different modalities, and all of them had brought some benefit. I know for me personally, when I went to A Wild at Heart, one, just understanding that I was in a story with two kingdoms that were at war with one another, enormous for me. As a man who felt that I didn't have power, just the dignity of being told you can actually operate and you can say no to these powerful spiritual forces, and to begin exercising spiritual warfare. That was my thing. That was the sword that I exercised everywhere. I was a 2-year-old given a hammer, and the whole world, of course, looked like a nail at that point to me when it comes to spiritual warfare. 2-3 years of yelling at every spirit that I could even imagine. I got exhausted, and I realized, wait, this is actually deeper. And then I got clarity, okay, I can see how I was, I didn't get exactly what I needed when I was younger. Here are needs that went unmet. Here are things that people said to me that that actually did have an impact on me. I've been trying to deny it for a long time. So the categories and the tools on my belt just continue to increase, and my work belt is getting heavier and heavier, and yet I'm still not finding this life to the full, this joy, this peace, this freedom that I'm able to live in. One of the lies or the agreements that I came into Noble workshops with, I had identified a long time ago, but it was this lie: it's not okay to be okay. So the moment in my life that I began feeling like, you know what, the clouds are clearing, the sun is coming out, that's when I began to get scared. And whether, to what degree I began to manufacture, either in my mind or, in the physical world, something else to worry about, for some reason, I felt unsafe when things were going okay. And that's the world that I've lived in for a long, long time. That's the place where I was stuck. That's what I brought into my home. And being with a group of people who I didn't know, that I was invited to risk being vulnerable with, was exactly what I needed. And it's also, I just want to say to many of you, sonship, a huge part of sonship, and one of the earliest lessons in sonship, which never goes away, is just, is your Father going to provide for what you need? So let's just get this out there. What you offer, Sam, at Noble is not cheap. It's an investment. It's $5,000 to do it, and but it's one of those things that we have to face the fear that somehow we have to provide all of our own security, and we have to have money in the bank in case things go awry, because ultimately what we're believing is that it's up to us to take care of ourselves. And so when God doesn't come through, I better have some money in the bank. And many years ago, God said to me, the wisest thing that you can do is invest in the kingdom, and my kingdom lives inside you. You're not being kind to yourself, and you're not trusting me, and you're not exercising what I would like for you to exercise as a son. And that's trust that taking what I have given to you and investing it in the heart and in the spirit that I have placed inside you is not, it is in fact the wisest thing that you can possibly do. And I have on many occasions had to overcome my deep, deep fear of lack in my life and trust that God was going to give me something that was going to end up having this collateral beauty that would spill over into all the people that were most important to me. So, as a son, we need to be set free of that. Looking up Noble was something that happened in the moment. It was like a passionate, I am having a conversation with my wife. It became very apparent that I was in need. She needed to see me take a bold and courageous step. And she was like, I don't care what we have or don't have in the bank. You need to go and you need to address this. And so there are moments where what felt like a big expense becomes a very, very tiny expense. And what God has brought me back to over and over again is he says, I want to ask you, son, what will be more costly, for you to pay for this or for you to not pay for this?
You beat me to the punch, Jay. It's so good.
I'm older than you. So
you beat me to the punch, right?
He has told me that so many times, and not just in terms of therapy, but in terms of like vacations, just what will be more costly, to not go and have some joy with your family, or, to take some money out. And every time it's an opportunity for me to see that whatever I need, it's going to end up there when I need it, and maybe not a moment before. So it was worth every penny, Sam. It was worth every penny. In fact, as concerned as I was about the money coming out of my account and whether this was going to be worth it, while I was there, My wife, who is perfect and has no problems, she's a fully healed, fully redeemed woman. I thought to myself, she's got to do this. I don't know how we're going to get the money for two of us to go do this, but she's going to do it because it's so good. So if you're listening out there, there comes a point where the clouds part and you begin to see things more clearly. And there is nothing more precious and more needed in the world than for your heart to become healthy. Mm-hmm. Everything in your kingdom changes when your heart becomes healthy. So the question is, God, what is the provision for your healing for me? It could be Fight Club. It could be all those modalities. I would say Noble was not my first stop, but all the previous stops, I have been led to them. And it's not that they failed. They were all in preparation for this. So I'm thankful for every step of the journey, including this one.
It's so good. I have several pieces rattling around as you share that, Jay. One is the story that Stephen Covey shares at the end of his 7 Habits book. He shares the story of the lumberjack just sawing away on the tree, and he's not making much progress. He's just been sawing back and forth. And the observer passes by and says, have you thought, can you pause for a minute and stop to sharpen the saw? And the guy looks at him and just goes, I don't have time. I don't have time to stop to sharpen the saw. And I think in that moment, I was connecting with you as you were sharing, like, whether it's the 5 days away, I don't have time for that. Whether it's the saying no to picking up a couple of shifts, I don't have the resources to not work there. What you're naming is you should expect the same results. Then we're going to go around the loop one more time. If nothing's going to change. John Mark Comer has this line in his book, The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. Every system is perfectly designed to give the results that it gives. Which has a bit of an oomph to it, a little bit of a gut punch of the, if we don't have the time to say yes to the next piece, whether it's Noble or something else, honestly, just taking off 2 hours of work on Friday a little earlier to go sit in the park and journal and read and be impacted by beauty so that you walk in the door to, whether it's an empty house, a quieter house, a full house, whatever life stage you're in. If you don't have the time, you should expect the same results this weekend, unfortunately. But if you can risk slowing down that saw, even for the 2 hours, you give the opportunity for something different. You give the opportunity for that to be sharpened, and you actually end up creating some of the opportunity for you to do more with what you have. Here's this little asterisk. Very few things affect our telomeres and our DNA that lengthen them. They give us more of our own biological self to draw on. Sleep, mindfulness, connection of our internal world. So when we slow down and we go, there is a place in me that has been, something you said right at the beginning was contempt, Jay. Really? I have to go inward? And what? There should be if there can be the curiosity around, why contempt? Why do I feel rage at myself for needing to look under the hood? You actually bring more of yourself back online in the way that sleep and rest does at a biological level. The more you're willing to connect with your heart and with what's under the hood, you're giving more of yourself back to be present for the rest of your day. Like, you guys, I know I'm a biased voice here, but there's just, I hope, whether it's 2 hours or a week with us at Noble, that there's some off ramp from the expected familiar pattern.
There's a couple of observations I want to make. First and foremost to the audience is that the idea that men have in growing up, that the touchy-feely, the stuff that feels feminine, let's just say that is mislabeled as feminine when we're kids, the what feels like what we have been taught is emasculine to be in touch with your heart is a sign of weakness as we get older. And yet the more we want to be wholehearted, the more we realize that that whole journey just goes deeper and deeper and deeper into the heart. It cannot it cannot stop at our epidermis. It can't start. It cannot stop. It cannot be complete by getting the job that you want, the church that you want, the theology that you want, the reading the books that you want that are best, the podcasts. At some point, that love of God and the salvation and Jesus Isaiah 61 message, it has to be absorbed, and it has to go into the system at some point for it to bear fruit on the outside. So I just want you to hear some men saying the opposite of what others may have said, that it's an act of great courage as a man to look at your life, to be humble, and to say, I need help, and I know that it has to do with my heart. It's not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of immense strength. And it's one of the great joys that I have of working with fathers and sons and fathers and daughters on adventures is that the guys who come are humble, and they're like, okay, something's not right. I want to change, and I know it's me. I can't expect my 9-year-old to change. This is about me changing. So that's the first observation. And let's see. Second, my goodness, my second observation was really good, and I just forgot it.
It'll come back in like 2 minutes.
Yeah, it probably will. Okay. This is the second one. Last night I'm talking with some of those dads on a Zoom call, and all these dads are lamenting, "Oh my God, like as I'm learning about sonship, I want them to see their stories with their fathers because they have to look at their stories first and get some clarity before they're able to offer anything to these sons that they showed up on these adventures with, right? Like, please, this is not about tips and techniques for your son. This is about learning the love of God so that you can embody it and then you can actually have something to offer. It's so available. And last night we were joking because the dads were like, gosh, I just don't know that what if I mess up? What if I don't do initiation right with my sons? What if I don't read the right books? I mean, it was all about kind of what can I absorb so that what comes out of me is what my son needs. And I said, guys, you know what? I'm just chuckling here because I'm going to be on the phone talking about this stuff with Sam Eldredge tomorrow. How many of you think that Sam Eldredge walked out of childhood with no wounds and perfectly prepared for life? And all of us were like, okay, all right, yeah. All right, so there's a perfect father, a good father, one of the best fathers on the planet. He cannot be the shield for all that the enemy has for us and for stripping us of our glory and trying to keep us from operating and bearing the image that God gave to each of us, which we talked about earlier. So, like, you need it. I'm just saying, hey, friend, brother, I'm telling you, like, you need to take the healing journey, not just a journey of knowledge. And that may lead you to some place where it's going to require a big investment on your part. And I just want you to say, I'm for you. I'm cheering for you on that.
Here's an interesting other side of the coin of your conversation last night, Jay. And I felt this as a dad myself. Do we inadvertently communicate to our sons, if we want to spare them from all harm and all wounding, that we don't think they could handle that harm and that wounding when it comes? And that actually, for our own sake, we need them to be okay, and we need them to never have been harmed. Not saying it's true, not saying it happens to all the guys, but I've sat with a few where that has ended up being the unintended. Want to do it right, want to do it perfect, so afraid of the harm, and the son has gone, is that because I won't be able to handle it when it comes? Like, whoa.
Well, that's the breeding ground for anxiety.
Right? Sometimes in our fear of the thing, we run headlong into it.
Yeah. So, gosh, there's so much more I would want to ask you, but In a, and I want to give you the last word here, but in a practical sense, to meet each of us who are listening in a very practical way, let's talk about campfires. Okay,
Yep.
I'm at a campfire. Let's say there's 10 guys around the campfire, and what we want to create is an environment where men feel safe to tell stories. Okay, so now as a guy who's been trained in a lot of this, if you were to create a fire to bring some hope and some healing and some benefit to men, what would you do? How would you, as a facilitator, create that environment and protect that environment so that on a limited scale, what I experienced at Noble could be offered by a layman?
Yep. Yeah. Um, I'm going to do my best to make it practical and not fire hose.
Okay,
How's that?
great.
So I initially, the term is containment. So we're all looking for safety, whether we're consciously aware of it or not, and engaging how much we can be at rest and how much we can be at play based off that safety. So containment in this context means creating the container within which we can rest, share our stories, trust, feel safe, and maybe risk something different, and risk some healing and some connection. And so you're going to win by making the containment as clear, both through what you do and what you say, as possible. So if I were to do it, some of the containment I would create would be, there's a known rhythm and a known length. Hey guys, what we're doing is this once a week or once a month, this Wednesday night, here's the 2 hours. This is what we're here for. Let's respect each other's time. Be here by this X. If you're coming, great. If that doesn't happen for you this week, we've got mercy for you. But if someone's going to roll in an hour into somebody's story, talk about a way to walk in, give them the nonverbal middle finger, and sit down with a bag of chips and tell them, you don't matter and I don't care. Mm-hmm. So I would rather someone, if they're going to be late, mercy, bless you. We'd love to see you next time. But the door metaphorically closes at a certain point.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Next, I would go, I would limit the scope at first, and I would go first. And by limit the scope, I would mean, I almost like a zero entry pool. In my neighborhood, we've got that for like the little kids, where it's just like the slope entry for the little kids. There's no mm-hmm. stairs. You just kind of like go on this gradual into the water. I would do the same in terms of the story work. I would go first, and I would share in a week and begin with something recent, and that would take 30 minutes. So, hey guys, I'd love for you to just share a story of what it's been like, a win and a loss, being a dad recently, or being a brother, or being a son, couched in that context. And let me tell you the win, and kind of give myself the time and give you the loss. And again, with the time, respecting hey guys, we're going to leave work. We're going to leave our jobs, our titles at the door. And I just get to be Sam. You just get to be Jay. And we're going to honor that. I'm going to take about 30 minutes to tell that part, which we're kind of focused up. In that, I would then use that to couch at the close, how we respond, how we hold space for each other. Because most of us, we're not taught these pieces. There's different data on nonverbal communication. Certainly it's more than 70, arguably it's more than 80% of all communication is nonverbal. And so as I'm telling and leading into my story, I'd invite guys to be aware of how much eye contact they're making and what their body language is communicating, and tell them at the beginning of my story, what I'd like them to do at the end is just to say thank you. That's it. Thank you, Sam, for what you shared tonight.
As opposed to
a wide open forum for responses. I would literally go, here is your script. We are going to practice with a script how to do this until it becomes natural to do it in a different way. Let me give you another example of ways that this happens. There's an idea in the Eastern Christian Church of a prayer rule. that you have a scripted, like the daybreak prayer, like the daily prayer, like you pray that way, like a cast, until you've readjusted to that, and you don't need it every time. You don't need it anymore. You've learned similar. This is true for holding space and communication. That phrase, holding space, kind of gets, I don't know what you guys connotate as you're listening, but this is the idea that I give you the neuroscience on it too. Interpersonal neurobiology. Your reaction to somebody else's story is actually going to let their brain recalibrate to what was appropriate. Your grimace, where there was something that was hard shared, but they just plowed right through, is going to cause a hiccup at a cellular and heart level that they go, wait a second, why did Jay just get a look like I punched him when I said that thing my dad said, but I just cruised right by it? The group, without words, will be creating a healing space by the correct emotional response. So then, Jay, over the coming weeks, what I would do is I'd begin to loosen the reins on the responses from folks. So we got the set time in terms of containment. We'd have the agreed upon length and scope of the story. And if someone's going off, there's a timekeeper and like a gentle redirect by you or whoever's guiding the group of, hey, Todd, just a heads up, you got 10 minutes left, and we're just going to honor that space tonight. I know you don't feel like you've gotten everything said, but that's what we've got space for. And that lets them go, okay, yeah, I'll do that. In our groups, we have rules that we agree to, group guidelines that it can be really simple. And one of the two I open with is ask permission to touch and ask permission to offer tissues. The ways that our nonverbal tells other people, I need you to button it up so that I'm okay.
Okay. Stop right there. Go back. Touch and tissues.
Yeah.
Touch and tissues. That's one of the rules that you touch on at the very beginning of Noble. Okay, so tell us why that is an essential rule. Just unpack that a little bit, because we don't carry tissues around the campfire,
right?
But there's so much wisdom in the rule that can be applied.
Yeah. So the rule is you do not offer tissues when someone clearly needs them, tears or snots coming down their face. You don't offer them. You wait for the person to ask. And you don't offer touch, the hand on the knee, the hand on the shoulder, the hug, whatever the degree of touch, unless there's permission given. The reason why is that non-verbally that communicates to the person, I need you to stop. I need you to stop the tears, stop the snot. I need you to stop the emotion that needs to come back into. It looks like soothing. It looks like, oh, I'm with you in this, like the friendly hand on the knee is the guy's heading that hard part. What ends up happening, though, at a heart level is that the person who has maybe fought quite hard to get access to those tears, to that emotion, experiences it as, oh, right, like this is a lot. I knew this was going to be too much. Folks are uncomfortable. I need to reel this in and dial it back. If it's agreed upon that those are only going to be offered when people ask, it actually lets the person that's maybe the focal sit in it without being abandoned. Because now they can choose to sit in the tears without asking for people to come close. But they know everyone that is there has agreed to not move towards them until they're ready. And this frees us from the other thing that can happen if there's not this agreed upon rule, where somebody gets like tearful and people just kind of like stare in silence and don't know what to say, and then that person has to button it up too. No. There's an agreed upon. This is the flow. We're going to sit with you in this, and when you're ready, you can ask, or somebody can ask you, "Hey, man, can I give you a hug?" And you can say, "Not right now, actually," or "Yes, please. Hey, can we lay hands on you and pray?" No, that's not what's needed, but you can do it from there. Or yes, come closer. Like that agency, that choice is such a dignifying act in the work of healing and the work of connection. This lets us heal in community. So
super valuable right there. Yeah. Thank you for that. So, okay. So, and I want you to continue. So what we're hearing so far is you create space, you lead the way. You are you are trusting, well, I say your eyes and your body. If you're not the one, if you are a hearer of another person's story, it would be kind on your part to allow yourself to be expressive. You know,
Yep.
like
You
it actually helps in the healing to smile at the points in their story that touch on joy, and to show a grimace when their story elicits, when it should elicit pain in
right,
them, because it communicates that you are tracking with their story, that you are empathetic to what's going on in their story. And then at any point, if there are tears, if emotions are being shed, we in many ways, we have to treat it like somebody who has, let's just say, been stopped up and needed the bathroom for a long, 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 long time. It's a glorious moment when once they can finally let all of that out. And emotionally, I know that there have been years that have gone by that I wish I could cry.
yep,
And once it's finally coming out, it pisses me off to have somebody say, this thing that you've been waiting for a really long time, I'm kind of ready for you to be over it.
right.
Yeah.
You worked for years potentially for that moment, hoping there would be a moment like this, and somebody nips it off 10 seconds in. You're like, oh, got it. I'm gonna
Yeah.
a couple just
Yes.
um I would also be really like with the responses. I'd have some guidelines initially, and it would be things like we do it noble, something that I connected with about your story, or
Mm.
one thing that struck me
Oh,
was,
so good.
and you want the communal response. You don't want to let the person share their story and then just hang out there for like, no, thanks, Bob. All right, I'll see you guys next month. Like that is a setup for like an emotional hangover and an overexposure. We need to like reflect back to them something. But I would have guidelines for that.
Hmm.
Bob, one of the things I connected with in your story was, and we use index cards. Write them
Yeah.
down, sign them, hand them back. So he's got something to carry with him.
Yeah. If you're listening and you're not watching, I've got a notebook from Noble that has all of these precious notes that I will carry with me forever. Little note cards with one or two sentence responses to my story. And I love it.
Oh,
So
it's
helpful.
often as healing as the work. You
Hmm.
have five other voices speaking in. This is what I saw. This is what I connected with. If there's space, Jay, I'll add this. As the group builds trust and the containment's felt, we know the hour, we know what to expect. We started with like a hard thing and a good thing. We went into our stories, a bit longer of a story time, and then there's maybe just some connecting. A couple of things that are a graduate level class in a couple of questions.
Hmm.
One, your experience of the other person is data. How do they make you feel as they tell their story?
Mm.
Do they seem pissed? Do they seem quick? Do they seem embarrassed? Do you feel disinterested? Something's not wrong with you. You are getting the blood splatter of their life across you.
Mm.
Read it. What does it say? And if you can tactfully reflect it back, that may be a great gift. Bob, I noticed you seemed really fast paced, like you wanted to get it over with. Is that true? Second thing, ask the obvious question. This is that back to that, don't be afraid of getting somewhere you can't solve. Bob, I'm going to pick on this guy named Bob. I don't know who this person is. Let's change that. Steve, I noticed you had some tears. Could you say where those were coming from? I mean, name
Mm.
the elephant in the room and give them the option, if they want to take another step. You guys, if it seems obvious, but we were back away from it, we just continue to abandon each other. Be willing to have the courage to ask that question, and you don't have to solve what comes next.
Thank you, Sam. I've got one more quick question for you, but first I want to ask, how do we find out more about your podcast, I mean, the resources that you offer, and how to just begin exploring the idea that potentially investing in ourselves in a way like this might be the right path for us.
Yeah. Thank you, Jay. I have folks go over to nobleworkshops.com. There's a free PDF in the header there called the Inner Child Exercise. I'd begin there, download that, and do that kind of workshop with yourself. It's a guided inner healing exercise. The podcast is at the footer, the blog is at the footer, and information about our coming events are there on the events page. So you kind of get everything you need to if you go to nobleworkshops.com.
Why did you name it Noble?
For a couple of reasons. The first was that we were told we were given a good and noble heart, and that there is this invitation to the noble work is this edifying, dignifying, courageous saying yes to pressing forward and being true. The second, tongue-in-cheek, is because this is a no bull workshop. No.
I can testify to that. Friends, sons, daughters, whoever's listening in on this podcast, I'm really glad that you were here to join Sam and I as we have walked and talked a mile along the tried and true road to being sons. We hope to see you again in the future, or at least share another conversation with you. Sam, thank you so much for being a part of my story, and for coming and sharing generously. And thank you for having the courage to ask God to make your sonship real and to partner with him in what he's doing. You are your Father's son.
Thank
and
you,
that's
Jay.
a glorious thing. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, friends, till next time. Take care. Bye.